A week ago today, far-right commentator Charlie Kirk was murdered at Utah Valley University while hosting one of his famous "Prove Me Wrong" college Q&As. Charlie Kirk was an individual who was a white supremacist that filled the flames of hate with incendiary and degrading rhetoric under the guise of Christianity. His platform was embedded with racism. It was embedded with misogyny and transphobia and homophobia, as well as just complete degradation of human beings and human rights. Charlie Kirk said that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake and that it effectively laid the groundwork for the permanent bureaucratic placement of DEI, and that's why society is so messed up. He said that when you get on your aircraft, it's worrisome if the pilot is black, because of course we should be worried about that. He said that black women do not have the brain processing power, essentially. Charlie Kirk also said that some gun deaths are worth it in order to preserve the precious Second Amendment. A week after Kirk's death, there, of course, still is this ambivalent response in American society. There are people that believe that we should be mourning Kirk. There are people that believe that we should be empathizing effectively with what happened to him. There are also people that are apathetic to what happened. There are people that are not mourning, but are effectively calling out who he was for what he was. And when it comes to this situation, I feel like a clear discrepancy should be made, because a lot of people are saying, you should never be murdered for, different political opinions. Being racist is not a difference of opinion. It is a deeply corrosive and dehumanizing ideology that is rooted in ignorance, irrational fear, as well as unhinged hatred. That is how we must be very clear about this situation. Also, another part of this is the people who are saying that Kirk was a Christian, that he was effectively a self-proclaimed Christian. Charlie Kirk was not a Christian. You cannot preach hate and then out of the very same mouth proclaim to love and support Jesus Christ. To proclaim to love and represent Jesus Christ. It is antithetical to the teachings of Jesus Christ. You cannot be both a Christian and both a white supremacist. You cannot be both a Christian and both hateful. The two do not mix. The two do not correlate at all. Charlie Kirk was an unrepentant racist. And we should be clear about that. That's who he was. And so for the people who are calling, this to be a moment where the country comes together in a sense, and that we should, put our differences aside, and that this should be a moment where we effectively look within ourselves for peace and empathy to give. People do not have to empathize with this moment. People do not have to have sympathy for their oppressor. People do not have to have sympathy for someone who indulged in oppressive beliefs, for someone who said that Palestine does not exist and the Palestinian people do not exist, for someone that believed that black women were intellectually inferior. People do not have to sympathize with someone who made fun of the murder of George Floyd. People do not have to sympathize with someone who made intentionally incendiary and racist inflammatory remarks. People do not have to sympathize with that at all. It is only in the United States where a racist white man, a racist white individual can be revered in death when they gave selective respect in their life. That is only in the United States when something of the such can happen. Why is it that now that Kirk is no longer here, that there is this sort of revisionist biography of his life that does not compute with actual reality? Why is it that when we play the clips, or that when we show what he actually said, it's met with this, "Oh, now's not the time for that," or "You're disgusting. How dare you post or say something like that?" These are his own words. As a Christian myself, we are taught that we reap what we sow. If we sow hate, that is what unfortunately will return to us. If we sow love, that's what will return to us. It is also the belief system in Christianity that the tongue is very powerful. You are supposed to watch what you say. It is a double-edged sword. You do not say things that are incendiary. You do not say things or participate in efforts that are oppressive to the Lord's people, or continue to use God's name in vain and expect that you will live a fruitful, joyful life. Charlie Kirk was murdered by another hateful man. We are in a point right now in society where the hypocrisy of the right is in full revelation. Because what is happening here is utterly repulsive. The fact that the right in this country is saying that, oh, we're going to declare war on the left because the Democrats are the ones that's the radical violence. When Melissa Hortman was just assassinated in her home over the summer, along with her husband, as well as another Democrat as well, was also shot, and his wife as well. They survived, but again, this is still political violence. And political violence in this country continues and it continues, but it is perpetuated, it is encouraged by the right. It is encouraged and perpetuated by Donald Trump. It is encouraged and perpetuated by MAGA. That's where we are in this country. That's where we have always been. Violence is not the answer, but violence was the answer in 1921. For the Tulsa Race Massacre, when a group of white racist residents burned down Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. Burned it down over a false rape accusation. But violence is never the answer. Violence isn't the answer until it was in 1898, when you had a thriving multiracial democracy in Wilmington, North Carolina. But just because black people were in elected office, and just because Alexander Manly owned the top newspaper in the state, the most influential and wealthy newspaper in the state, that even had white residents collaborating to get, their businesses advertised in it, violence was the answer then, because, we can't have a thriving multiracial democracy. Violence is not the answer, but violence was the answer in the murders of Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, Walter Scott. It is only in the United States where this type of hypocrisy exists, where this type of racial hypocrisy exists. Why is it that we are expected to sympathize with our oppressor? Why is it that we are expected to sympathize in a situation like this when we are consistently and constantly degraded, made fun of, dehumanized, and killed just for speaking the truth, just for speaking up for ourselves, just for defending basic human rights? No, what happened to Charlie Kirk was not deserved. But as a result of our current political environment, completely engineered and supported on the right, in a sense of encouraging violence and inciting violence, this is where we are as a country. So it should not come as a surprise. White supremacist violence is the number one threat in the United States. It is the number one threat. And it is not just the fact that what's happening is we as a country are facing this situation where the right is saying that the left needs to have war declared on it, but it's also, in a sense, what we are seeing in terms of the right beginning to begin to return violence onto the black community, where we see HBCUs under threat of mass shootings because of what happened to Charlie Kirk, even though this has nothing to do with us. Where we are seeing black people being lynched in Mississippi, even though this has nothing to do with us. This is the United States. This is who this country has always been. When it comes to systematic violence in this country, when it comes to political violence in this country, it is only violence that is consistently and incessantly committed by white supremacists. And that is the unfiltered truth.